Oh, okay. All right. We are now reconvened in open session after our wonderful dinner and relaxing time. All right. We are now reconvened in open session. We will now consider action on closed session items. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. I move to appoint David Bass to the position of Director of Facilities Maintenance.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Aye. Motion passes. Next up are our review items. First being review of minutes from previous meetings. No questions? May 7th, and then we have the May 14th. Moving on, review of district and campus improvement plan performance objectives.
Good evening, President Burdine, board members, and Dr. Dupree. Each year, the board must approve our district and campus improvement plan performance objectives per TEA. As part of the information you received prior to tonight's meeting, associated with the campus and performance objectives, I would like to point out that although many of the expected results measures are compliance-based, as we continue to work with our community-based accountability system, our goal is to really balance that compliance with those results measures with measures that truly represent our intended outcomes. So this evening, Dr. Audra Udi will kind of share our process that we went through to determine our district and campus improvement plan performance objectives. Again, I'd like to point out that those are very compliance driven, but we're moving away from that process as we work through our community-based accountability system measures.
Good evening, board.
Ms. Udi, hold on one second. I'm so sorry. We've got some audio issues.
Okay.
There we go.
We good?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you could start over,
Thank
please.
you. Annually, ISD conducts a comprehensive needs assessment, assessing patterns and trends in our data, and we work really hard to give examples to our campuses and help them really be able to focus in on the various forms of data they have rather than simply using state accountability or STAR data, but to use the various types that we have, whether that's college readiness data, REN 360, our universal screener, the various learning assessments that we have, and other types of formative assessments that we have all through the year. And what they do then is utilize those trends to determine where there are patterns that we need to disrupt in order to improve performance for our students. From that data, we then determine what our targets are and develop our performance objectives in alignment with your goals that you have set for our students and also the board's vision around the profile of a graduate. The performance objectives help us both focus our efforts to decide where to spend our resources, not only our funding, but our time and our training and coaching and those sorts of things. And also they help us decide where we can get the best growth and innovation in order to be an example as a district amongst other districts throughout the state. Through the performance objectives, we set those targets, and underneath that, we then develop strategies to help us achieve those performance targets and the board goals. In addition to that, in compliance with Texas Administrative Code, we ensure that we are meeting the compliance requirements for state and federal accountability. To help this effort this year, we offered several trainings to our campus leadership, and we also did voluntary labs, individual discussions. We implemented a new feedback process on the campus improvement plans and also developed a new campus improvement planning guide. While a great deal of the district and campus improvement plan does help address the state and federal accountability pieces, one of the things that we want to emphasize is that we are currently in a state of transition as a district, and that we are working to lead a better way. So a lot of the work that is going on behind the scenes right now is to create a community-based accountability system that will tell the full story of Fort Bend ISD around the profile of a graduate and the development of our students to be great citizens, able to take care of themselves and others and contribute in meaningful ways. This visual helps represent that story that we're trying to tell, in that the bigger picture is around the development of the whole student with the profile of a graduate. The two smaller segments on this visual are to demonstrate what the state accountability represents with the gray dot, and that is information like passing rates, growth rates, TELPAS, STAR, the various forms of state testing that have federal implications as well. And then we have our local accountability system, which is our learning assessments, the various formative assessments that we offer to help create student ownership of their learning. And so it is our goal during this transition year to build out what that community-based accountability system should look like and to begin to pilot it so that it will in turn influence what the district improvement plan looks like. We will, as far in the future as we can see, we will continue to have state and federal accountability as a piece of the picture, but we do not want it to be the entire picture of what is happening with our students. The district has been working with John Tanner. Ms. James has served on our design team as well, doing the work around designing what this new accountability system ought to look like so that we can help lead the way in the state of Texas as we show what is a better type of accountability system. This visual represents some of the ways that a new accountability system could look compared to the current state and federal accountability system. In this new system, there are several areas that we could address under community-based accountability that don't really get addressed under the current state accountability system. For example, some of the main areas are safety and security, community involvement, student enrichment, college and career readiness in a broader sense, and then academic achievement in a broader sense as well. One thing that CBAS, or community-based accountability, will not do is create a lot of quadratic equations to try to figure out relative performance compared to others, but really own what it is that we develop in students in a straightforward fashion that our stakeholders agree is the best representation of what we're trying to grow in students. Okay. With that new accountability system, we will also have a signaling system. So that would become a part of the district and campus improvement planning to signal the progress that we're making toward building this better system and what achievement we're accomplishing in building the attributes in our students. And so part of the work of the design team is to develop the key questions that would say what it is we're trying to do for students and how we're doing that. As a part of the district and campus improvement planning, we tie all of our performance objectives to the board goals that have been set. One of the great things about Fort Bend ISD, compared to other examples I've seen throughout the state, is that every single one of your board goals, the 4 listed here, are focused exclusively on students. Our primary purpose is to ensure that the students have the best curriculum, the best instructional methods, the best types of assessments for them to own their learning, and that we give them the best opportunity to develop as a whole person versus just that academic content. Okay. The process for district and campus improvement planning it first started back in about April and May with some training with our campus leadership centered around writing their comprehensive needs assessment. So we asked them to start looking at all of their data, attendance, discipline, various types of academic performance, campus culture and climate, those sorts of things to assess what patterns and trends they were seeing, and then to use that to write problem statements around the areas they wanted to target for improvement. With that, we also asked them to dig deeper and to figure out at the most base level or the core level, what was the root cause of that problem? What were the things within our control that we could do to ensure that we improve that area of performance? And so once they determined the root causes, we came back and did some additional training on how to write a performance target and gave several exemplars in regard to helping them write their performance objectives. And then the final piece of that for the year is to monitor progress all throughout the year and report on how we're progressing toward achievement of those performance objectives using the strategies underneath. What we are asking you to approve as the Board of Trustees is the performance objectives for the year. The strategies underneath them may be adjusted throughout the year as campuses assess where they are and where they might need to make adjustments through the year. Finally, we involved various types of stakeholders throughout this process. At the district level, that means including academic affairs, Department of School Leadership, our various executive team members. It also involves the Academic Advisory Council, which is essentially our site-based team at the district level. And then at the campus level, it includes principals, assistant and associate principals, coaches and interventionists, department chairs, et cetera, and then also their campus-based leadership team. Now, the key thing about the Academic Advisory Council and the campus-based leadership team is that they both include parents, community members, business and industry folks to help anchor us to what is important to the community. And we'll continue to do that sort of thing in a more expanded way under community-based accountability as well. Finally, this is a visual to represent where we start and where we end up with the district and campus improvement planning process. We first look at the vision of the board, which includes the profile of a graduate, and we talk about the expected outcomes as demonstrated through the board goals. We develop the comprehensive needs assessment to determine what our problem areas are that we want to attack for innovation and improvement. We use the board goals as our base and then build out our performance objectives, and then underneath that build out our strategies, all with the goal of ensuring outcomes and results related to the profile of a graduate. So we hope this visual helps kind of anchor the process for us. I also want to thank my team members and others who have helped with the development of the district and campus improvement plans this year, as it took a concerted effort on the part of state and federal programs under the leadership of Deidre Holloway and the accountability and assessment team to review all of the campus improvement plans and give feedback to each one this year. And in addition to that, we wrote a manual or a guide to help support the campuses. That leadership form or that feedback form channeled through the Department of School Leadership to give additional feedback, and then we closed with principals by answering questions and giving support. I'll wrap it up at this time, and I'd like to entertain any questions that you may have in regards to the campus and district improvement plan.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine, and thank you, Dr. Udy, for your presentation. I love it when I get a binder from the district and I get to browse through and learn out about all the work that's going on, and certainly I can tell by the effort here and some of the things you talked about in coordinating with all the campuses. It's been quite a bit of effort to gather all this information. I looked at it through a new lens this year, or maybe one that's becoming clearer and clearer, because as you mentioned, I'm on the community-based accountability design team. So we're really stretching our brains to try to understand and live the difference between compliance and achievement. And we do a lot of things in our district because we have to, and that's compliance. And I want to, and as the chair of the Vision and Planning Committee, we've worked very hard on moving us in the direction of achievement to achieve our vision, which is the profile of a graduate. So I'm saying that all to say that many of these performance objectives in here are very compliance-based. Probably a good 3/4 of them, if not more, based on STAR testing, STAR results. A few of them talk about a year's worth of growth that could be maybe measured in a different way besides STAR. But so I went through with a little, pencil, and I kind of tallied them up, and I guess I hear you all recognizing that this is kind of a compliance exercise and we're in a transition period. But then I realized we're going to take these and we're going to approve them, and then they're going to turn into maybe a superintendent's evaluation instrument. And I think this is where the board has an opportunity to maybe step away from this compliance mindset and focus it a little more carefully on what we actually want to accomplish. And the reason, one of the things you said is the performance objectives we choose are the ones where we'll spend our time. And I think, and I'd like to hear from my other board members, but I think where we want Dr. Dupree and the rest of the staff to spend their time is on working towards achieving our vision, spending less time on compliance exercises. If we think of it as the picture that you showed with the circle, a very small dot, then proportionally, that's how much time we should be spending, small in comparison. I recognize we're in transition time, but maybe as a board, we can start to lead that conversion from and weed out some of these compliance things, especially out of the superintendent evaluation instrument, and make the performance objectives less star and more achievement oriented. So those are my comments. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mrs. Tossan, or I'm sorry, Mr. Rosenthal, do you have a comment?
Yes. As far as the local assessments go, we're not doing formal district assessments anymore, correct?
We have what are called the learning assessments that are based on learning progressions. They're based on strands of Teeks, and Ms. Williams could probably contribute to that discussion as well.
For each content area, we replaced our traditional assessment system with assessments that are more open-ended and are scored with a rubric, and we provide those 2 times per year in reading, math, ELA, and social studies.
So we're still kind of shutting down classes for a day or two here and there, a couple times a year?
I wouldn't say that we're shutting down classes for a day or two. The traditional assessments that we gave were between 10 and 20 questions long. These are between 1 and 3. Intended to be part of our formative cycle, where students are working with tools to develop student ownership of learning, where teachers have the opportunity to look at student work in PLCs to identify where students are and where they need instruction so that they can meet the standard.
Okay, so, I mean, before, boxes and boxes of tests showed up, and, it took away a couple days of classroom time for formal tests, but that's not what's happening now.
No, it should not take a couple of days for formal tests for the learning assessments. In K1 and 2, it does take some time to listen to student answers, but it shouldn't take days.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mrs. Tossan?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. So I have a couple of comments or a couple of questions. I will echo what Mrs. James has said. I would agree with that, that we need to be focusing more on the things that we've talked about and building our local accountability system. And I understand that we're in transition in moving in that direction. I do think it's important that we, through our evaluations, whether it's a superintendent's evaluation or the board's self-evaluation, that our objectives reflect our priorities. I understand that you guys have to, and I guess for me it's kind of a balance. I get that we have to be focused on compliance. We don't want campuses in IR, and we also literacy in large part is driven by some of our assessments. But I agree that we really need to be focused on what our priorities are, and I think in developing those instruments and putting those objectives is probably a good idea. I mean, our goals are there; they're solid, and and I think they're a good foundation. And when we're developing that this year, I think it's a good thing to keep that in mind. that we want to be maybe less compliance and more focused on those types of things. So I'll just say that, and maybe there's some balance in that we can try to glean from this that you've put together and when we're developing that instrument. The other comment I wanted to make, and I sent this to Dr. Dupree a few weeks ago, in the, trying to find exactly where it is, where we talk about student self-assessments, ownership of learning, and we talk about students doing the self-evaluations. I want to make sure that that students are free to do these self-evaluations without being penalized for it. So I think, or I believe that we should not be grading students on these, and there are some teachers who do that. So I just wanted to say that in this context, and my fellow board members can weigh in if they would like to, but I've had some experience with this, and I think it, it prevents kids from being honest about their own evaluation of themselves. If we say it's going to be part of your grade, then I don't think we get authentic feedback, and I also don't think that's a good way. That's a good message to be sending to our kids. So I just want to make sure that when we have these campus improvement plans and that our teachers and our administrators understand that we want to make sure we're not penalizing kids for that we really want them to reflect and to give authentic feedback on themselves.
We are on a learning continuum as we work through that process, so that's great feedback. Really, the intent of having self and peer assessment within a classroom environment, it's just that it's about feedback, and it's really about peer to peer. That's why it integrates so nicely with the profile of a graduate, because we're looking at working with kids. How do they communicate with each other? How do they look at their own work up against a learning progression? How do they learn to communicate with each other to give each other feedback? But it's really targeted feedback. And so it's not necessarily grading the self-assessment. It's really looking at a learning progression and learning how to assess where am I along this learning continuum so that I know where to go next and what I have to do to get there. So that's really the ultimate intent.
Right.
But again, we're on a learning continuum to get us there. And so there's a lot of learning that we need to do and probably some clarification of some misconceptions associated with that.
Yeah, and I think, self-evaluations and self-assessments are good. Those are good for all of us and it's good for students to be able to go through that process. So, and I don't think, at least in my experience, it's been used exactly like that. But I think it's great to use them in many ways in the classroom. I just want to make sure that we're not penalizing kids for doing that.
Absolutely.
And we also in here is this pilot of our proficiency-based grading system, and so I think I had asked. I know that's in progress, but it would be good to get an update on that and exactly how that's being implemented and what's working, because I know some of that, that peer assessment is involved in that. So what does that look like, and how are we using that within this grading system? And so I would be interested in seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mrs. James?
Yes, I'd like to just go back to some of the specifics of what I was talking about. So let me ask a question of the staff. Is these performance objectives and these expected results, are these, once we approve these are going straight into this superintendent evaluation instrument?
No, ma'am. At this point, they would go into the district improvement plan, and then we will be using that along with other work we're doing based on the board's goals and priorities to bring forth the superintendent evaluation instrument. So based on your feedback, what I took away was the board might be interested in us, cherry picking some of these for the superintendent evaluation, that align more with the direction we're going, the vision the board has, rather than all the compliance-based pieces.
Yes, I would wholeheartedly support that. And all these things need to be in here for compliance purposes? Or
I'll
is,
let Deanna address that.
I would say that you've provided some feedback. So a lot of the expected results measures we list so that we can have a comprehensive view of that particular performance objective, but it doesn't necessarily require that we put every single results measure on there. I think that the intent was for us to look at various different data points so that we could make the determination rather than making the determination based on a single data point.
okay, well, and I like that, and as we're kind of developing what our measures are, that's good feedback to have multiple ones. So I would say you can use your judgment as to what that would be. I think it's just, again, if we are telling people that our district improvement plan results are going to be based on STAR scores, then, or our campus improvement plan evaluation is going to be based on STAR scores, then that's what we focus on. And I don't know that that's what our real goal is. That being said, Mrs. Toussaint brought up a good point about schools in IR. And interestingly, we had a conversation about this at the design team meeting, because there was sort of a, well, what do? We want to work on these kind of big picture, continuous improvement kind of model, but we're in IR. And so to get out of IR, we have to get this STAR score from here to here, end of story. And so that becomes an interesting balance. Is the focus on STAR, or is the focus on teaching reading with fidelity? And is kind of like, is our focus on literacy, as the board's talked about literacy as being a priority for the year, or is our focus on getting our STAR score from here to here?
And maybe one leads to the other.
Well, or maybe it's growth, student growth, and maybe it's, right, one leads to another. Because STAR is only a snapshot in time, one day data set. It can be informative, but it can only be so informative. It's a very small dot to me on the information structure, on the information path of our district information. So I know we have a lot of things in the works that are kind of coming together, but I just wanted to emphasize that, because I don't think it's we have to have STAR data in this document in order to know how our kids are doing. Because STAR should not be the sum total measurement of knowledge of how our kids are doing. We have other things that Ms. Saavedra's team has worked really hard to develop and put into place. So thank you. That's a long-winded way to say the same thing.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Thank you, Mrs. Toussaint. I think there were some great comments made there, and I agree with both of you. And in my limited view, or limited experience, I should say, if we do those basic things and we do them with fidelity, then we will pass STAR. So I think, to Mrs. James' point, I like this slide, and I think it's a very good visual, so I do appreciate that. And thanks for all your work, Dr. Udi, your team, and thank you, Mrs. James, for being a part of that. And look forward to seeing more about it in the future.
Thank you.
We are now moving on to, let's see here, 6C1. Review the proposed adoption of a board resolution authorizing the sale of 0.1665 acres out of the Goodham Elementary campus to Fort Bend County for the South Post Oak Boulevard Improvement Project. Moving on. Sorry, Mrs. James, go ahead.
Sorry. So is this looks like I'm not familiar with this campus. This is like a strip of land next to the road or the side, along the side?
Ms. James, that is correct. It, literally, when they built the subdivisions around it, their fences were already at this point, so they were anticipating the widening of the road at some point. They've now come to that point, and they're asking for this strip of land. So on either side of the school, the subdivisions are already set back to that same location.
All right, and, okay, so this isn't impacting our existing building or our existing space for the kids, or how is this space being used right now?
There is no impact whatsoever. This is right up along the street right away.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez and Mrs. James. Next, 6C2, review proposed donations exceeding $10,000. We have the Settlers Way PTA donated $16,366 to Settlers Way Elementary for the purchase of audio-video equipment, cover field trip costs, and support technology and science needs. We also have non-cash donations in excess of $10,000 for the Austin High School Bulldog Band Booster Club. They donated a 53-foot moving van trailer to transport marching band instruments and equipment. The estimated cost of the trailer is $36,400. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Moving on, 6C3, review proposed purchases exceeding $50,000 for pianos and related items. 6C3B, physical education and athletic supplies, equipment, and related items. Mrs. James?
My question on this one was around the cost, and I was trying to understand. It looked like we were tripling our costs, and I was trying to understand why.
One of the reasons why the costs are more is because we're including the purchases that have been made by extended learning in the past, because they've been doing some of this in the past, and it hadn't been captured along those lines. And then also with the expansion of the teams, we have soccer now at every middle school, for example. There's that much more activity in addition to secondary schools.
All right, it just seemed like a really large percentage, because we already had PE going on at, 78 campuses, and when I don't know, it just seemed like a pretty large increase based on the percentage.
Right, I
On the
understand.
percentages, so I was trying to work
We're just-
that out on a scale if it was.
No, and I understand that. We just want to make sure we're not putting ourselves in any situation where we'd have to ratify anything in the future, just giving us some room.
Okay, and we have it in the budget. If we do, then just seems like an awful lot of money.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett and Mrs. James. Moving on, 6D1A, review proposed purchases exceeding $50,000 for waste removal, disposal, related items and services. Moving on, 6D1B, professional services agreements of a real estate broker and consultant services. All right. 6D1C, police department body worn camera. All right. 6D1D, ID badges, printer system, camera system, supplies and services. Mrs. James.
So my question on this one, when I looked at the, on the next page, there's a chart that shows, right there, stop. It shows the student location app, $1 million over 5 years, but we're not purchasing that right now, or it's included as part of the contract, and we'll start paying for it at the end of the 5th year? And then would this even last 5 years? These are my questions, or I'm just trying to grasp what the situation is. I'm not sure who should answer that. I wasn't even looking at you, I'm looking at them.
Make sure that,
Should be a light on. Oh, yeah.
Okay. That was given to us free of charge over the 5 years as part of our negotiations. So it is included over the 5-year term, and we will be using it.
Okay.
wow, that's incredible. How are we able to do that now?
I'm sorry.
How are you able to do that?
I have an awesome assistant director of purchasing who's chief negotiator.
It's great.
She did a few best and final offers to negotiate our prices down.
Wonderful.
So how long do we expect this system, because this is a piece, this is in the bond, this is part of what's in the bond, right? This system. So how long do we expect this system to last or to be functional?
Well, I'm going to defer to the IT, the rest of the team. I know at least 5 years for implementation, but I think we could go through 15 years. That's what we've been trying to do. Oh, Mitzi.
She's right behind you.
No, we put the RFP out, and we did it for 5 years initially, just so we could run through and test it out. There's no set end of life associated with the software. The hardware that's in the package will have an end of life, associated with it over time with wear and tear. But we want to enter into this agreement because we think it's the right solution for the district. So we're not expecting any type of end of life soon. And also, this is a scalable system that offers additional functionality that over time we can do additional things, as like the Raptor, the one we do for visitor badges. We can add that module in the future and consolidate, the vendors that we're dealing with, as well as there's some key things that Chief Ryder's interested in when it comes to the safety and security around kids that would be badged, would be able to tap in to classrooms using USB ports on the teachers' laptops, so we would know exactly who's in the classroom. So we see some real potential with this solution going forward. We're just trying to start with the basics first and get everybody badged. Okay?
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Next, 6D 1E, kitchen grease trap removal, cleaning and related services. Sounds like a Dirty Jobs episode. Next, 6D 1F, pest control management services. All right. 6D 2A, review proposed professional services agreement with Jacobs Project Management Company as the district's construction manager agent for the execution of Bond 2018 work. All right. Do we have any audience members who would like to speak? Hearing none,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
meeting is adjourned.